Welcome everyone to this month's executive briefing. The topic for today is from key person risk to key team value, de-risking for a better exit. And our guests today are Dr. K, and he will introduce himself in a moment and give you details about his background, as well as Rochelle Carrington. And so we will definitely looking forward to hearing from both of these great practitioners, and they are in a position to help us at eXitSystems help owners really kind of reset. And we want to hear some of their thoughts about de-risking and becoming a person who adding more team value versus being a key person of risk. And we'll talk more about that as the questions are asked during the panel session. And we also have Michael Neal. He will introduce himself as well as part of our strategic team and part of the panel. And so we'll go with Rochelle. Introduce yourself, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, very happy to be here. I am the founder of Emotional Intelligence Blueprinting. And my background before all of this was sales and sales management in the magazine publishing industry, working for fashion magazines like Glamour and Marie Claire. Did that for about 16 years and then went on to create my own sales training company. And when I was doing the sales training and management training, I worked with a lot of leaders, a lot of founders, a lot of business owners. And toward the tail end of that particular segment of my professional career, I started to notice that no matter how many techniques and skills and things that I would give the leaders and even their sales team, there was something that was missing. And I had originally thought that it was perhaps mindset that was the issue, and we did a lot of training around mindset as well. But what I discovered was that was just the tip of the iceberg. And that's really what got me into founding and creating Emotional Intelligence Blueprinting. So what we do is we work with CEOs and business owners who have built successful businesses. They've got successful lives. Everything on the outside looks absolutely amazing. But on the inside, they're stressed, they're unfocused, they get to a point where they start to feel unmotivated, they're not sleeping very well, and it doesn't feel like them because the people we generally work with are very goal-oriented and ambitious people, and all of a sudden they just feel stuck and they can't make sense of it. They don't know why. And what they do generally is they turn to what I would call mindset hacks, which are things like journaling and positive affirmations and reframing, but they notice that those things still don't work. And so what we do is we use neuroscience-based tools with them to help release the emotional triggers that are causing those feelings in the first place. And we do those without having to relive through old stories or traumas or anything like that. And the results that we get are lasting and really transformational, where people really go back into feeling like themselves again and being able to accomplish all the goals that they set.
Right. Thank you, Rochelle. Dr. K.
Yeah, so I love that. Everything you said there about the mindset hacks and the affirmations, they sort of work until they don't, right? And you think about your average business owner, the high-achieving, growth-seeking business owner. We're in it to take care of our clients, take care of our teams. We're trying to take care of our families in the process. And somewhere along the way, yeah, I should be exercising, eating better, and all of those things. And even when we seem to have it all together on the outside, something doesn't feel right on the inside. So my premise is simple. When our emotional health is not in peak shape, we make poor decisions, we strain our relationships, and we accelerate burnout. And when that business owner gets to that point where it hurts enough, I'm the guy they call. So the approach that I take is really based on a lot of it being from my own personal history, plus the medical training. In a previous life out of undergrad, I graduated from Cornell University in 2005 with degrees in applied economics and management and biology. And I went to work for one of the premier investment banks on Wall Street in 2005. that was not a good time to decide to start working in that industry. And so as I watched a lot of our competing banks around us crumble and a lot of my friends get laid off, I did the only thing I knew how, which is work harder, be a perfectionist, be a people pleaser, say yes to everything. And it was great for my career. I was able to advance and get promoted to associate and then vice president faster than anyone in my department ever had, to that point at least. And it felt like I was achieving all the things that you're supposed to have in life to be happy. But despite having my own apartment and paying off my undergraduate loans and paying off my parents' credit card debt and giving more to charity than I ever thought I could in my late 20s, I hated the man in the mirror, and I didn't know why. Because no degree of success was ever going to fill the void of how self-critical I was on the inside. And I didn't know that it was really my emotional health from the get-go that was never in a good place, because being a high achiever and achieving great results doesn't mean that you're actually deriving that from a good place. And so I hit burnout, and I started having these thoughts of, would anyone miss me if I was gone? And that's what scared me. That's what made me realize that something had to change. And as fate would have it, just as I was at rock bottom, and nobody knew that I was suffering, but I saw my sister after a 3-month span, and she had lost 30 pounds, cystic acne had cleared up, she was vibrant, energetic, and I was just at that place that I was like, I will do anything to feel better. And so I asked her what she did, and she goes, I've just been eating a whole food plant-based diet, mostly raw foods, uncooked fruits, vegetables, just as they're found in nature. And I said, God, that sounds so horrible. Show me how to do this. And so I gradually changed the way I ate, and suddenly I realized I was, without expectation, allowing myself to see what would happen for the first time. Despite doing P90X and Sanity and all these other things to lose a lot of weight in the past, I'd plateau, I'd come back. But this time was different. There was no expectations. And I was on a journey to losing 100 pounds and inspiring other people along the way. And as I was just sharing recipes and techniques for how I made the lifestyle changes, yeah, people lost weight, but I saw type 2 diabetes, chronic migraines, chronic joint pains, all this stuff go away, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I said, this is fulfilling. I have to figure out how to do this for a living. And so I left my career on Wall Street, absolutely the dumbest financial decision I've ever made in my life, but it was totally worth it. I left to go to medical school in my 30s. And in medical school, I did meet the love of my life. And after we graduated, we got married, and I wanted to really answer this question about burnout, right? And because generally we have two approaches. We have psychiatry and we have counseling, and both are needed for different people in different situations. But my journey to emotional health came through food. So there has to be more to this equation. And as Einstein once said, you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. And so there has to be a different way to think about how to be emotionally healthy. Nobody's taught us how to be emotionally healthy. And ultimately, it's simply this: we're made for a world that we're no longer in. We were made for nature. Everything in our nervous system, in our hormones, every system that we have is optimized for survival in nature, and not this crazy modern world, certainly not the life of a business owner. And so how do you bring that element to modern life? And it's really by optimizing what I call the 5 pillars of emotional health. Your psychology, the lens through which you see the world, understanding yourself, your emotional intelligence, your emotional resilience. Number 2, your relationships. Who you spend your time with has a drastic impact on how you feel, how you think, act, and feel. Your nutrition, because 90% of the neurotransmitters that regulate how we think, act, and feel are made by the bacteria that live in our gut. Our gut health and our emotional health are intricately connected. You can't really have one without the other. Number 4 is sleep. First thing to go when we're busy, but it's vital for our long-term brain health, and it's incredibly important for emotional resilience. And number 5 is body movement, because motion dictates emotion. And so when we can optimize those 5 areas, we perform better. And I work with entrepreneurs, executives, and companies to help them build emotional health from the inside out using those 5 pillars.
All right, thank you. And Michael.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me here. And Charles, glad to be one of the eXitSystems partners. And similar to what Rochelle mentioned and what Dr. K mentioned, you both say you changed something in order to change the way executives think for the better. And I do something similar as a strategic partner in Schooling Mitchell, not necessarily body changing, mind changing, but I change the way they think about their business. We focus on what I like to call their set them and forget them expenses, things that most businesses typically overpay between 30 and 70%. And we and our team of a couple hundred analysts look at these things and typically save businesses 28%. And as we all know, working with executives, we all talk to founders, CEOs, presidents, co-founders, VPs on a regular basis. Everybody knows that a dollar that you save in the expense line hits the bottom line positively. And when you can boost EBITDA, let's call it by $1, $10, $100,000, $1 million. And now I'm looking at you and my Brady Bunch screen, Charles. We all know what that means in terms of potential exit, increase in valuation. So that's why I enjoy doing what I'm doing, changing sort of the mindset about the business, where I'm excited to hear more from Rochelle and Dr. K talk about how they change the mindset for both physical, mental, familiar good, and obviously then a big benefit on the businesses that these executives run.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. And I'm Charles Dentz. I am the founder and CEO of eXitSystems. And we're essentially a transformational-based exit readiness platform where we have partners, strategic partners who help us create growth and value acceleration for our clients. And we leverage AI to help us diagnose and take deep dives into our clients' challenges, and so that we can accelerate getting them results. And the whole idea behind it is that we help them scale, systemize, and sell their business. Ultimately, every business either sells or it fails. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that every company that we work with, that they have the option either to continue to run their business optimally and with great revenue increase, or they eventually get to sell their company at a premium at a time when they choose to do so. So let's get into the questions. And we want to keep these questions moving pretty quickly. We want to get through as many of them as we can. So I will ask that the answers be as concise as possible, but let's also make it conversational as well. So we may not get through all the questions, but the idea is that the quality of the answers is something that will help business owners specifically who are struggling with whether it's mindset or the idea that they need to run their business better, or the idea that they are the bottleneck, or the idea that what do I do with my life, after I sell my company. So first question, we'll go to Dr. K. And that question is, what role does emotional clarity play in helping finders initiate succession conversations with family or key team members?
Well, one thing I think it's important to remember is, again, if you fully embrace the fact that this whole decision-making framework machine that we have, this operating system, is made for a world that we're no longer in, we're able to accept certain things like, so the neuroscience and psychology studies have indicated that we make roughly 80 to 95% of our decisions emotionally, which leaves only 5 to 20% at best that are deliberate, rational analysis. And exiting your business absolutely should be something that is heavily weighted on that rational side. And yet, think about all the times that we run into clients who unfortunately unconsciously sabotage that process. Emotional decisions are usually good for what's survival in nature, right? And when business owners are making 2 to 4 times more decisions per day than the average employee, right? We're going to gravitate more to those quick default emotional micro decisions. So to understand why we make those micro decisions, it's important to understand at a subtle level, what did the business allow us to, as a business owner, to continue to believe in about ourselves such as I'm a hard worker, right? I'm a provider. I'm not lazy. So we need to really craft, what does life after the business look like, where I can still fulfill a lot of those needs as a human being, because without that, they're not going to realize, again, because it's an emotional decision, why they're doing the things that they're doing that aren't allowing them to really fulfill what they need to do to exit.
Well, you said a word that I'm curious if there's additional elaboration on. You mentioned sabotage. What do you mean?
It's when self-sabotage is when you say you want something and then you get in your own way and don't let it happen. It could be, we've all experienced things like the New Year's resolutions that we don't really follow through on because we start at the level of action. What action do I need to take to get that outcome that I want? But in reality, if we start at the level of what is the unconscious pattern that allows us to continue to act the way we do, that's what has to change in order for the actions then to follow. And so if that's not in line, that's where the sabotage takes place.
Got you. Rochelle, you have any input on that question?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just kind of describe sabotage in a little bit different way. So when we understand that we've got three different parts to our mind, the unconscious part is the part that just runs habits and keeps our heart beating and those sorts of things. So we're not really concerned about that. We've got our conscious mind, which is our logical thinking. That is where we are trained to spend about 95% of our time. Yet, as Dr. K said, it runs about 5% of what we do. Then you've got your subconscious mind, which is where all of your emotions are. We are trained to spend about 5% of our time there, yet that runs 95% of what we do. So when sabotage happens, it's because the conscious mind, the logic says, I want this goal, but the subconscious emotional side says, yeah, well, you're not really good enough to get that goal, or that goal doesn't feel safe. And so these two things just start to fight each other. And what we know is a couple of things from neuroscience. One is that emotion drives everything. In the 1990s, neuroscientists figured out, when they looked at the different parts of the brain, that emotion fires before logic or thought by about 350 milliseconds apart. So so many people think that they're making logical decisions. Everything starts emotional. So it goes emotion to thought, to action, to results. So if you want different results, you've got to go back to emotion, not to action, not to thought, because emotion is the driver of it all. So what we also know is that when these two things are fighting, your conscious and your subconscious, what happens is that emotion will always override logic, no matter what. When you get emotional about something, and we've probably all had situations where perhaps you were in an emotional discussion with someone and you got angry and you knew, don't say this particular thing because it is going to make it more fiery, yet you do anyway. That is an example of emotion overriding logic. And then afterwards, when the emotion subsides, the logic can come back online. But that's really where we start to sabotage, is those beliefs that get created from all of the thoughts and experiences that we've had. It fights with what that goal is. And the two of them, until they're aligned, you're going to self-sabotage in some way.
Wow. Yeah. So there's a lot of internal battle going on with that. So
you don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. So Michael, you have any comments on those?
The only thing I can add, and this comes from working with one of my coaches, and he's worked with a lot of the big names that I'm sure Dr. K and Rochelle have studied from as well. But he firmly believes, and I've learned this as well, that every decision maker, whether it's folks like us that are on this call or the executives we deal with, they're governed by three things. They're governed by judgment, ego, and fear. And everyone has one primary one that drives them. And as Rochelle alluded to, we all drive back that most basic thing, which is survival. And Jeff, judgment, ego, and fear, they're all governed to keep us safe and survive, no matter how big, no matter how scary. And Rochelle said it really well, as did Dr. K. We'll go back to where we are safe and comfortable, even though it may not be the most logical thing. And when I work with executives and I'm trying to convince them to do what I do, to do what eXitSystems does, oftentimes we run up against that judgment, ego, and fear. And once you understand where they're coming from, you can have a much more meaningful conversation related to whatever topic is at hand. And for me, it's making the business more successful. And for Charles, it's helping them sell the business at a higher multiple in ways that can be very, very beneficial for them and their heirs.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. And I'm hearing a lot of things that are very foundational to who we are. But I want to shift the question just a little bit, or to a different question. Rochelle, how can second generation leaders overcome imposter beliefs when stepping into a founder's shoes? So they've whether it's taken over from a parent, a grandparent, or a sibling, how can they overcome that imposter syndrome, imposter beliefs?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And the interesting thing about that is that doesn't just happen second generation. Sometimes imposter that can happen in even founders can have that oftentimes. And so what we know is that those beliefs, those emotions are generally fueled way back in the first 7 years of life, that 0 to 7 year imprint period when our brain is in theta state. We just become a sponge for any information that's going on, and your brain has not yet created any sort of logic. That part of the brain is not developed until after 7 years old. And so what happens is we have all these different experiences and feelings. We take everything that someone says to be true because we don't have the logic to say, maybe that doesn't make sense, maybe that's not what they meant. So when your, parent says, why can't you be more like your brother? Or your teacher says, you're not good at math, you take that then as I'm not good enough, or I'm a fraud, or people are going to figure me out. And that then becomes the emotional blueprint. This is why people then feel that later on in life, because you've created an emotional blueprint in the first 7 years. So to get to your question about what do you do about it? What most people would do is they would do a bunch of mindset hacks that we talked about a little bit in the beginning. You journal, you do positive affirmations. I really do know what I'm doing. You reframe. I can, take this business to a different level than my parent did. The problem is all of that talks to the conscious mind. And again, everything happens at emotion. And so the problem with the imposter syndrome is it is an emotional feeling that has created that concept, that idea in somebody's head, or that belief in somebody's head. And so you can't use a logical tool like journaling, like therapy, like reframing to fix an emotional problem. So how do you fix it? You have to release the triggering emotion that happened way back when. And when you release that emotion, whatever that emotion is that is attached to it, whether it's fear, whether it's doubt, whether it's anger, or whatever that might be, when you release that, you can then get rid of that belief entirely. And you can release those things very, very quickly. And there's neuroscience, based tools that we use to help people release those. That's the way you're going to get it at the root and get it out. In the meantime, if you don't have access to that, or you're not doing those sorts of things, you can use some mindset tools, but you got to understand that those are Band-Aids, and that at some point that is going to come back up. That feeling is going to come back. So if you want to get rid of it completely, you've got to release the emotion that caused it in the first place.
Wow. So yeah, and most people don't know how to access those foundational, those triggering emotions that happened years ago because it's not front of mind. But Dr. K, you have any additional thought?
Yeah, it absolutely does start at an emotional level, and as far as a tool that can be very helpful for a lot of people, I'm a big fan of EMDR therapy for that reason, of being able to go to that root state where we were making big, broad, sweeping assessments of ourselves that last our entire life when we have no ability to really logic through things. And sometimes it can grow from, things that are not really even in the context of feeling like enough, but just simply, I've had clients that were simply the father worked 3 jobs to make ends meet, and just wanted to spend more time with dad. And somewhere at 6 years old decided he's only here because I'm not good enough, right? Not in those words, but eventually later in life, it came into those words, and it might have nothing to do with their actual ability to run a business, whatever it might be. What's also, and Rochelle, I love what you're talking about with these mindset hacks. They are hacks. They are absolutely, because especially with the affirmations, I've had clients come to me going, yeah, I had a coach that really hammered this affirmation thing, write them on the mirror every morning, your bathroom mirror and stuff like that. And he's like, I feel like it's making it worse. I feel like I'm lying to myself. And I said, yeah, you are. Right? Because at a certain point, if you keep telling yourself this, but then the results in your life don't align with what you tell yourself, it only makes that problem worse. So you really do have to get to the root cause at an emotional level. And then you can build the other parts around it. But I will say another thing with imposter syndrome. I've certainly seen this with my clients, and even speaking to an executive coach who works with Fortune 100 C-suite execs. He made a broad statement at one point to me when I was having a conversation with him. He said, I've never worked with any executive in my entire career who didn't have some degree of imposter syndrome. Because at a certain point, you're always leveling up to a place where there's fewer and fewer people around you that have done it. So then it's like, me? How am I supposed to do it? So there's that question that pops in for a lot of people, even in their most subtle moments. But the other thing to remember, specifically for the second generation, you can think of it almost as, you think about some of these pro sports teams, whether it was, Aaron Rodgers following Brett Favre in his Hall of Fame career, or now Jordan Love following Aaron Rodgers' Hall of Fame career. If you try to be the person that came before you, you will fail. But if you fully own who you are, gifts and flaws, right, and lead from that place, it's much easier to get the outcomes that you want without feeling like you're trying to fight this idea of being an imposter compared to someone else.
Wow, I love both of those responses, and really gets to the heart of what we're dealing with at eXitSystems when we deal with these owners who are really getting in their way. And so getting in their way in terms of having the ultimate success that they really want to have, or what they dreamed about having at the beginning. Michael, any additional thoughts?
No, those two absolutely nailed it. And I love the ending on the sports analogy, since I'm a Steelers fan and look forward to seeing what's going to happen on Thursday Night Football tonight.
So that kind of fits in. There you go. So we just have a couple of minutes left. And so I would like for you guys to concisely respond to this last question. And it is one that I think is very foundational to everything that's already been said, but maybe we go just slightly deeper. But I will ask that you would take maybe a minute and a half to answer this last one. And this question is, what practical steps can help leaders build emotional resilience so they can let go without losing identity and purpose? That's a big one, because that's what happens, I believe, that many owners, founders, they don't want to lose their identity because it's tied to their business. Their business is their purpose. And so how do they let go? And Rochelle or Dr. K, either one can go first.
Well, what we teach people is there's a difference between your identity and your role. Your identity is who you are. That's your soul. That's you as a person with no roles whatsoever. And your roles are all the things that we take on throughout our lives. And we've got hundreds of them through our lives, whether it's mother, father, business owner, golfer, etc. And so really helping that business owner to realize that their identity is not business owner. Their identity is them as a human being. And that has a massive value that is actually a higher value than they are as a business owner. Because as a business owner on any given day, you have great days when you do wonderful things. Let's say it's on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 10. And there are days as a business owner that you're a 2. However, your identity on the other side, you as a human being, is always a 10, always a 10 out of 10, because humans have great value in and of themselves. And so when a business owner can separate, the business is not them, the ownership is not them, it is a role that they took on for a certain period of time, and they will now take on different roles as well. When they can make that separation, it's a lot easier for them to walk away or to sell their business and not feel like they're selling part of themselves.
Yeah, completely tracking you. That makes total sense. Dr. K.
Yeah, beautiful. We have to be able to define ourselves by something greater than our roles. We have to be able to define who we are as something that is unaffected by changes in the circumstances that happen outside of our control. And ultimately, letting go when it's difficult is because of a matter of expectation. Expectations drive how we feel in response to situations, and usually these situations are outside of our control. If things happen above our expectations, we're happy. If things happen below our expectations, we're upset. But if we can lower those expectations, it becomes easier to let go. But instead of just doing that, what we also want to do is raise our standards. What will we or will we not tolerate going forward? What is the life that I want to create for myself post-exit? What's the life that I want to create for myself right now? How can I define legacy as more than what I leave behind, but how can I define legacy as how I show up in the world right now for the people who matter the most and beyond, right? If we can raise that standard for what it means to be us, what it means to be a human being, and lower the expectations for the things that are outside of our control, that's the framework for joy. That's what makes it that much easier to let go and step into a world where you stop chasing joy and you begin living in wonder.
Yeah, I love that. How we show up every day is really important. Michael, any additional comments?
I mean, the only thing I'll say in the 90 seconds you've allotted me, Charles, is that an exercise that I went through. I love the point of seeking joy and wonder, and that what you do for a paycheck may not necessarily define you, and it won't define you forever. But what I went through was, figuring out what my calling is. Some people call it their North Star, their calling, their mission. Simon Sinek's "What's Your Why?" But when you understand what your calling is, what your why is, and your reason for being, everything else can flow from that. It allows you to jump from, job to job, role to role, but allows you to live life with purpose and with passion, finding the joy and finding wonder. Because if everything is directed to that, then the cascading effect or the ripple effect follows. And for business owners that are leaving, if they understand what their purpose is, what their reason for being is, it doesn't matter if they've gone from president to ex-president, president to just father, grandfather, aunt, uncle, grandmother, friend. If they've got that calling, if they got that mission down, everything else will ripple from that.
Yeah, purpose is a big one, and thank you for that additional input. Man, I could go on and on for hours asking you guys questions and listening to the responses. Amazing because of your background, your experiences, your education. It all comes to the forefront as you're responding. So I really appreciate what you guys shared today, and look forward to continuing to work with you as well. And with that said, Dr. K, Rochelle, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, easiest way, you can go to my website, drkarthikramanan.com. Might be hard to spell. You can go to emotionalhealthmentor.com. That will also take you there.
Thank you.
But also, feel free to check out my book. I talk about a lot of these concepts in there. All the stuff that I teach my executive clients, a lot of them are in here, a lot of those foundational lessons. And I really wanted something that is action-oriented. So you go through the chapters, you do the exercises. you'll be able to really implement a lot of the things that we talked about today and then some.
Nice. Rochelle.
So 3 ways to get a hold of me. You can go to our website, which is emotionalbp.com. You can send me an email, which is rochelle@emotionalbp.com if you have questions. And then the other thing, if you want to know a little bit more about all the neuroscience and all the different things behind this, I've got a blog on Substack. It's called Mindset Matters. It's free to get on there, free to read, and you can really dig into a lot of different pieces of the topics that we've talked about today.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for eXitSystems, it's pretty simple to get a hold of us as well. And we are through our website, eXitSystemsAI.com, eXitSystemsAI.com, or just email me directly at charles@eXitSystemsAI.com. And we'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you. And the way that we partner with our strategic partners, the way that we all work together is we always make sure that the right people show up at the right time. So kind of goes back to this conversation, showing up at the right time. So really want to show my appreciation, just express my appreciation rather to our panelists, Rochelle, Dr. K, Michael. It's been a great conversation. We really could go on and on and on. You guys revealed some amazing stuff. Way out of my wheelhouse for sure, but we look forward to working with you guys in the days to come.
Thank
you.
And
thank you everyone who attended and who will be listening to this as a recording. And we just thank you for your time and wish you all the best in your business endeavors as well as in life. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Everyone have a great day.